All right, today is Tuesday, June 6th, 2023. This is an interview with Vivie Miller and Edwin Elam. Is that correct? No.
Elam.
Elam.
Like
Edwin
Jack
Elam.
Elam. Jack Elam. So
Elam.
can we start that over?
We're going to keep going. Elam. Edwin Elam. At the Duncan McDonald House in Waxhaw. My name is Kirsten Messinger and I'll be the interview. Janet Perano is the camera operator. All right, so first question, when were you born?
I was born February the 11th, 1949, right here in Waxhaw.
And so you've lived here your entire life?
I lived here until I went to college, and after college, different places, and we came back in 1914? No,
2014.
Yeah, 2014, yeah.
All right, so where specifically did you grow up? Could you name a house, a street?
I grew up at 524 Miller Drive, which is where we are now. Most of my life, yeah.
All right, so tell me a little about that, about your childhood growing up.
Well, when we started out, there was my mom and dad, myself, and one of my sisters, because the baby had not been born. So we lived with my aunt, who was maybe about a couple of blocks away at that time. We all slept in the same room, a little tiny room, my dad and mom, and me in the middle, and then my sister in a bassinet.
Oh, wow.
So my father was a brick mason, so he eventually built a home on 524 Miller Drive.
Oh, wow.
And it started out as 3 rooms, a bedroom, a living room, and a kitchen, and an outhouse.
Oh, okay.
And then, of course, my sister was born, and so then all 5 of us slept in one bedroom. The baby girl slept with my mom and dad, and my sister and I slept in a bed right beside their bed. And so that's how we grew up. And of course, we went to a Rosenwald school here in Waxhaw, near the cemetery. And at one point, my dad couldn't find work here. Like I said, he was a brick mason. And so we packed up everything in a little U-Haul that you pull, and we drove to Columbus, Ohio, and we stayed there for, I don't know how many months, but they gave me the option to come back at that point to go to school here or to stay in Columbus with them. So I came back and stayed with my grandmother until they came back, and then we went back to Miller Drive. And since then, my dad has put, how many more rooms? There were 3 rooms there. He put a living room, a den, 3 more bedrooms, a bath, and then another bath. And it was the craziest thing, because my mom would go to work, and she never knew what she would find when she got home, because she would go to work and he might build a room onto the house. And so we had a fireplace, and she came home one day and he had bricked the fireplace completely up and put a Franklin stove right there.
Oh, wow.
So, but it was really nice because my dad had friends who were also brick masons, and they built each other's homes.
Nice.
So they were, we have really nice homes for back then. It was probably less than $10,000 because they built each other's home.
Yeah.
And then I went away to school. Well, I went to Western Union, which was a high school, Western Union High School, and a great school. And I graduated from there in 1966, and I went to Michigan State.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I was there, of course, for 4 years, came back. I worked for Wachovia Bank here for a little while before I moved to Atlanta. I stayed in Atlanta for a while, and I moved to Augusta, and I met this man right here.
Best time of our
And we came back here, like you said, in 2014, January of 2014. And that's about it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask some detailed questions.
Okay.
So, when your family moved all up to Ohio, why did you decide to come back to school here?
Well, they gave me the option, and this was my home. This is where I knew I didn't want to go to a school up there that, you know, I had to meet new people, and Columbus was a whole different atmosphere from the little town in Waxhaw here. So then I decided to come back here. I think I was about 9. So they put me on a plane.
Oh gosh.
And I flew by myself to Charlotte, and my grandmother picked me up at the airport there, and we came here.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your decision to go to Michigan for college?
When I was in high school, we had a teacher, Mr. Baker. He was a science teacher, extremely intelligent man, and he thought, you ought to go to Michigan State. He had taken some classes there, and he thought it was a really good school. So he said, apply. So I applied, and it was the only school I applied to,
oh, wow.
the only college I applied to. And I was accepted, so that's where I went.
Logical enough. All right, so tell me a little bit about the Rosenwald School. Where was it located to start?
It was located off of Howie Mine Road. What's the name of the street? Curitan Street. It wasn't a street then. It wasn't a Curitan Street. It was just a road. And it had and one thing, it appeared a lot bigger than it would have now. I mean, it would just seem like a massive, like all of these concrete steps, you know, up to the door. And I thought, gosh, I don't remember it being that small. It was really small. But anyway, that's where it was, and you would go up to the steps to the porch, and now you go through the door, and there was like a large foyer. There was a room immediately to the left, and I remember just it being storage. Like they just put things that were broken or things that they want to store or whatever in that room. Then a little bit further on to the right was a classroom. Okay, so then on the left side there was, I believe, a cloakroom over on the left side where you would hang your coats. And immediately beyond that was a classroom. And just to the right of that classroom, and as you were coming into the front door, there was these like 2 doors side by side, classroom here and a classroom there. And then there was like a wall, just a little small, maybe about 4 feet wall between the 2, and it had doors that you could slide and close all the way. So, but that was 2 classrooms if we wanted to be, or an auditorium when we opened the doors, and because there was a little stage in that one on the right.
Okay.
There was a little stage there. And the room on the right when you were coming into the door had a side door where you could go into right up to the stage. So whoever you were performing, you would go into that room. But that was a classroom also. So that was the way, that was the design of that particular Rosenwald school. There are different designs. So that one was, I guess, counting the storage room, 1, 2, 3, 4 classrooms.
Okay.
Counting the storage room.
So then there were multiple grades.
Multiple
together.
grades in each room.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, were there multiple? Was there a teacher for each grade, or was one teacher teaching?
One teacher teaching the various grades
Okay.
in that particular class.
Okay.
Room, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Fascinating. All right.
And I can
Oh, go
remember, and there weren't really many things I remember about the school as far as discrimination, but what I do remember is hand-me-down books.
Mm.
I did not like that. I mean, even as a child, I thought, because they already had names in it, they would write all in them, and then they would hand them down to us, to the black kids.
Yeah.
And so, and then the teachers made such a big deal out of, clean the books, clean the books. So at the end of the school year, we had sandpaper and we had to sand the edges of the books, and sort of clean the binding of the books, so that whoever, I guess, could use them the next year. But we got the hand-me-downs from white students from white schools, and I didn't particularly like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Were your teachers black or were they white?
Black.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Was the how did the school fit into the administration wise? Were you under the same administration as the white schools, or did you have your own separate?
I believe we were under the administration of the whole school
Okay.
system. Danny Davis was the superintendent. As a matter of fact, his sister lived next door to us.
Oh, okay.
And so he was superintendent of public schools, and so I'm pretty sure that it was all under one.
Just encompassing. Okay.
That's also the land that we own, where the homestead was actually purchased from the Davis family.
Oh, okay.
The Davis family also is one of the 3-4 families that founded Waxhaw, and so our families have been kind of connected to Waxhaw's history. Maybe 3-4 generations.
Yeah.
And they sold her father 6 acres of land on Miller Drive, which was then a horse path. And of course, when we moved back in 2014, about a year or so after that, I discovered there was a story here, and because of the land that was behind our home and pieces that we didn't own, that was owned by an LLC, which I looked up and found and had no idea about the connection to the family, and found out after reading the deeds and everything that I needed to, find these individuals. And I called them and found out that they owned the other 15 or so acres that surrounded our land, because the way it was sold is that either they had to own it all and finish it, or we had to own it all and finish it, because it was the Jim Crow property of the 1940s. And so I put together the deal to assemble the land from them, and their family took a couple of weeks to think about it, and doctors, engineers, teachers, FBI people, and all the folk in their family, engineers, and they came back in a couple of weeks, and I actually said, your family and our family started this challenge that we now have, and if y'all don't have a whippersnapper to take it on, I'd like to buy it and build townhomes. And they took a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and came back and said that the family agreed to sell it to us.
Oh, wow.
And so now we've accumulated a total of about 25 acres.
Nice.
Of which there's about to be 66 townhomes that will be built and all approved and everything, just waiting on one item that we need to get clear. And so for 80 years, a development was held up, just because of the time and period that the town didn't want that section of town to grow, and we put it together, together, figured out the puzzle, got it all done, and now it's turned into a $30 million project. So we're excited about that. And her dad really had tremendous vision, and we're finishing it.
Nice, nice.
And the school, my cousin was telling me, and that's one reason I wanted him to be here as far as the Rosenwald School. He said, and nobody else remembers, but he says that a bomb was found under the school at one point. And it could be that may have been the time when I had moved to Ohio, so I wouldn't remember. But I couldn't find anyone else to verify that. But he said that they found a bomb, they were playing, and he says he doesn't remember why they, went under the school or looked under, maybe a ball rolled under there, whatever.
Yeah. And
he said they found what, they didn't really know what it was at the time, so they told one of the teachers, and they came out and looked. And evidently it was a bomb. I don't know if it was dynamite or what it was, but teachers found, went to some black military people who had come back who lived in the area, and they evidently removed it. And that was all he said he could remember.
Wow.
And so I was wanting him to be here so he could tell you that.
Kirsten, I think it's pretty interesting to note that during this period of time for the persons who will be watching this in the future is that during this period of time, of course, people may not know that Booker T. Washington partnered with Mr. Rosenwald, who actually was the CEO and chairman of Sears at the time. And of course, Booker T. Washington was the first African American to go to the White House, to be invited to the White House under Teddy Roosevelt. And so this sprung up a unique partnership, and we can all probably imagine what the conversation was during that time period about education. The Sears organization put together where you could actually buy a house in a box, so to speak, which that technology is being done right now.
Right? Yeah. Bringing it back.
People are going and bringing it back. And but America found a way to engineer homes with developers and all of these things to the homes that we have today. But you could actually buy a home from Sears, you could pick, or you could also buy a school, and it would come to your town on train. People would meet up and have everything in there except for the hammers and nails, and they'd put the item together. Well, the politics of that day actually probably saw the growth of the Rosenwald schools, which was a real movement throughout the South. I mean, there were hundreds, if not thousands, of schools, and you can Google this. And some of them are still standing. And of course, it was about to rival the power structure of that day. So many of the schools were successful in being bombed with dynamite and fires and everything. And I recently found out just a year and a half ago that I attended a Roosevelt school, which was Fraser Elementary, the school that I went to in Covington, Tennessee. During this same period was one burned because people were about to get equal rights and come under the same system administration, and busing was talked about. People were going to be sending their kids. They may have gone to some of the black schools. So vigilante types got together and destroyed those schools and those memories and those people's lives. And Fraser, of course, was maintained. It didn't burn it all down. It burned some of it, but I had already left the school at that time. We were left and moved to Memphis in 73. And it's a great track for where we are today. I was a student at Elvis's high school, which was my junior high school, junior high school. But after leaving the Rosenwald School and the county school, then, just moving back here in 2014, just with the history and the way my mind works, I was able to kind of catalog all of this and was a history student as well and did very well in it, and civics and all those things. So we understood much of what was happening, what did happen, and why it all happened, and just knew we had to fix it.
Yeah. My follow-up question. How did you get to school? Did you have to walk, or did they have buses?
I had to walk.
Yeah.
I walked. Now they had buses.
Not for you.
But not for me.
Yeah.
But we walked to school.
Yeah.
And it was, and you think about that today, little children, they really didn't, most of the way to school was through completely black neighborhood. So they did not worry about anything happening to us, racial tension, anything. Part of the distance, we did walk through white neighborhood, but my parents, knew them, and they knew my dad, which, he could be a difficult man to deal with, so. But anyway, we had to walk.
That's why she loves me so.
So the high school you went to, you said
Western Union,
Okay.
off Highway 75 on Western Union Road. It's actually in Mineral Springs, but it had a Waxhaw post office
Still does.
address.
Okay.
It does. So.
Oh wait, is that now Western Union Elementary?
Yes.
That was the high school?
It was both. It was an elementary and high school.
Okay.
Which was customary during that particular period. They were together. The elementary school was maybe on 1 acre or 2 acres, and the high school was just right next door. Kind of made it nice.
Well, actually, they were connected by a little covered
Breezeway.
walkway.
Yeah.
Oh,
Same as ours was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, was that desegregated when you went there, or was that just all for black students?
All for black, just for blacks. Towards my, I guess around the 11th grade was when desegregation
Okay.
began. My sisters went to an integrated, but I opted to stay because I was so close to graduation.
Yeah.
It didn't really make any sense for me to go to another school.
Yeah.
And so it was around that time. So yeah, at Rosenwald and Western Union, it was all black. All
Okay.
black.
Okay. All right. We're gonna shift gears a little bit and talk about your family members. Tell me a little about your parents. These are the pictures of your mom and dad next to you.
Well, my mom was a Massey, and she was really from, it was called a prominent family. His name was Sam Massey. He was in World War One.
That'd be
One, and he worked for actually a company that used to be here in town called Niven Price.
Yes.
Remember that? And so he worked for Niven Price, and he had chickens, and he had cows, and he had pigs, and he had a garden, and he was a character too, from what I remember. But that was my mom's side. My dad's side, his grandfather worked for the railroad, and in around Rayford, I believe, around in that area.
Okay.
So he would go to Rayford, and then he would maybe come also.
Oh, wow.
And so he was a very prominent man also.
Well, all railroad men were at that time.
So I don't know, what else did you want to know about them?
Well, do you guys have any family stories that have been passed down, specifically concerning Waxhaw and its histories or its citizens? Or
I'd like to interject that the Sam Massey portion is Washington Street. That's where they own the land there.
okay.
Washington, the last two homes on the right, and the land before you get to it was land that he owned, and family members are still living there. As a matter of fact, the house next to the last on the right hand side should be on the historical record because I think 3 or 4 generations of Vivie's family were born in that home right there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, yeah, actually I was born at home in my grandmother's house. Not in a hospital, at a midwife.
Her mom,
At least that's what they're
her
telling me.
grandma.
I don't really remember. So, but anyway, yeah, I was born in my grandmother's house, which is still standing. I have cousins who are living in it now. My dad was originally from South Carolina, and I honestly don't know unless somebody told you how my mom and dad met. I don't know.
No, well, I do know that talking with some of the family relatives that during the 40s that many of the black men in Waxhaw, a lot lived on Blythe Mill, where the Stonebrook community is to this day, and many of them are still on the land just before you go into Stonebrook. And of course, when he got back from the war, one of the relatives shared that he left that part of the town and came down a horse path, which was really Miller Drive today. It was about maybe a couple of feet wide because they had horses back in that day, and so he was seen, I think, trespassing, from the Davis folk right there in the horse path, and cut across our homestead to go over to Washington Street. And must have been some words passed, and hey, what you doing over there, that kind of thing. So he must have said, where you trust me? And he said, well, hell, you ought to sell it to me. And of course, the relationship with the Davis family began. Worked out very well because we were able to talk, back with them. Very, very prominent people in the area who chose to leave Waxhaw. I mean, if your family founded the town, you can't let you get too big. So they found themselves, left Waxhaw, bring, I'm sure, around politics and back in the day, and you can see that. And here we are today on the Vivie's cousin used to be the mayor pro tem of Waxhaw, David Barnes, which the park, David Barnes Park, is named for. And of course,
I did invite him to come.
and the word is that the mayor of Waxhaw during a time early on, maybe 60s, 70s, just didn't make the meeting, and maybe it was planned, who knows. Relationships are very different than they are today in some instances. So Dave Barnes was mayor pro tem, so that means he was the chair. And so the chair told the Public Services Department, which was the same department that our department here in Waxhaw now with Todd Matthews runs, would have been, not Todd, but someone in that same position, called him up and said that his aunt's street needs to be paved. So they took the equipment and came down and paved the street, and it has a little turn in it because they didn't have the equipment to take down the trees, so they bear to the right. And the property lines were a little bit skewed, of course, and to make a long story short, the town maintained the road. It became a prescriptive easement after 20 years, and it's still a prescriptive easement by law, and as a path that pedestrians as well as town, citizens can go up. It's a one-way street going from north to south, and dog legs out behind what was then the BB&T Bank.
Yeah.
And our home is directly behind the bank, 2 blocks behind that. So the house on Miller Drive, on Providence Street, right behind the bank, our home is right behind that house. And it is interesting to note that the bricks that were on the buildings that burned right here at Highway 16 and West North Main, next to what's the restaurant right here? Mary O'Neill's, right next to Mary O'Neill's, which is a home where George Blythe and the Blythe family lived upstairs and storekeep downstairs. With her father being a brick mason and concrete finisher, the family knew, and others knew, that Roscoe was called, her dad was called to remove the brick, or he bought the brick. We don't know that part yet, but those bricks were removed and then put on our home today, a 1940s home. So if you're from someplace like Savannah College of Art and Design and you go down our street and you've got an architectural background from a fine school, you would know that there's a real story at our home, 1940s home, with 1889 brick on it. All right, I mean that's something to see.
Yeah.
And it is just a beautiful home, about 4,000 square feet, and recently appraised, nice value, right up there with the average home in Waxhaw, and I thought that was just a great story in itself, that the history of downtown engrafts and engulfs our home. It's an 83-year-old homestead. And but it was never grafted into the historical roles of Waxhaw based on some of the previous management, and let's just say those folk that just wasn't quite in step with the real history of what's going on.
And that's it, and that's, I wanted other people here because I don't really remember any stories, like you were asking about, and I wanted other people, especially Dave, who could tell some stories.
Maybe we can do it again sometime.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'll track him down.
Yeah, but I went to ask these some of these relatives questions. I mean, after putting our the real estate deal together, people began to volunteer things to me and to talk about it. And one of her relatives owned some land on Blythe Mill, still to this day. He's a UPS driver, and one of the officers at Mount Nebo, which is where her father went to church at, on Miller Drive, the black church, the Black Baptist church right there at Blythe Mill. We did find out that at one time, I found out that her dad used to serve on the Alcohol and Beverage Commission right here in Waxhaw, and the church found out about it and made him a deacon. So then I think he started making it at home at the backyard. There's a little home in the back of our home, which will be lost to the development. It was a little bit substandard, but it is a home in the back, a little chateau, where when the brick masons got through their daily work, they met there for their libations. And of course, when we got there and cleaning up the land, I found all the bottles.
I never knew that.
Yeah, there were quite a few bottles. I still have some on my shelf in my office there. I cleaned them up, but I also found a lot of bottles.
Work hard and play hard.
Yeah. He did give some of the land, which was the land just south of the church, was owned by him, that he left to his granddaughter, and I wound up purchasing that lot for our development, but a little bit of that was given to the church. They used to have gas, but there's not a gas tank there now, but they'll still have that piece. He donated that to them, a little sliver of land, so our land butts up right to the church, which will be fenced in for the development. But he was a member at that church right there in Mount Nebo.
Well, actually, they expanded the church onto his land. They said, they didn't know that it was his land, so he just donated it to his church.
My Lord.
I like that story. All right, I've got a, I'll hand this to you. When we're looking at those pictures earlier, you were talking about Luke Miller. What is his relation to you, and then what was Luke's story?
Luke, you probably know more than I do, and it's the strangest thing. My cousin, whom I wanted to come, is younger than I am. He remembers more than I do, so I'm thinking that maybe it might have been around the time when we were away that I don't remember.
Okay.
But evidently, there was some altercation between Luke, who was my great uncle.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
He was my great uncle. I'll let you tell him.
I found out through research of just about the town, and when we got back in 2014, of course, the administration from 2015 to 2019 was not an impressive group of people. Its leadership were, I think, demented, but I began to inquire about Miller Drive and some of the things about our development to come. And every time I would inquire at City Hall or Town Hall, I was always directed to the town attorney. Mm. Well, a guy with my intellect, skills, training, and background, that was a red flag that something was not right. That was the first red flag. I would call the right department for things. I mean, I knew how to matriculate government, but every time I would call to ask something, my calls were directed to the town attorney at that time, who is no longer a town attorney. And we discovered these anomalies about the land and what we couldn't do, and so I just asked the question, why? And so then that opened up a lot more questions about things, in the town of Waxhaw, because government should be just. It is owned by the people and not the bureaucrats who occupy some of the positions. And I was a great civic student, so I understood my ground, and I understood, what government was supposed to do for all people. And I learned that Luke Miller was a soldier who had come back from the war, who during that period of time, 50s, early 50s, late 40s, as they were returning, the Waxhaw police chief at that time, a guy by the name of Buck Patterson, and there's an article to verify all of this that tells the story, and I went in search of that and found several articles, who was probably double as the town drunk as well, and used to go uptown and knock the black soldiers and men off their stoops because he was the town police officer, chief of police. And on this particular day, he goes uptown, he knocks a man off his stoop who was already in soldier mode, and he grabbed him in such a way that he just literally beat his butt and threw him to the ground as he was trained to do. But he was not the police chief at that time. And of course, embarrassed and ran with his tail tucked, began to stalk this individual, Luke Miller, and the area with the indentions where Bernie's Bakery and the real estate office there now, and Maxwell's, that little, used to be an Esso station, gas station. That's why it's indented back. It's doubled as a washateer, a bus station, and other things. But at that time it was an Esso station, and Luke was there one day getting gas. And this former police chief of Waxhaw drew a gun and shot him, point blank. Another black man was there and heard the gunshot, or the commotion, was putting his trunk down, saw what was going on and ran. And this same Waxhaw police chief shot him in the back, where the real estate office used to be an oil pit. And because of this history, I leased that office for 1 year, about 3 years ago, to be a part of my wife's history and to be able to feel that and see that story in my own head and mind. And I could afford to do it, so we found the bullet holes in the wall right there at Maxwell's, where the guns fire, and it's very noticeable there. Should be a marker, but maybe one day there will be. The bottom line is that however the word got out to the deputies in Union County, the deputies were called. They came to find this wayward former police chief who was heavily armed, and on this particular date, which they cornered him, don't know where the exact location is, but there was a gun battle that ensued, and one of the deputies was killed. A Union County deputy was killed. Another whose arm was then maimed, and his career was ended. But they took Buck Patterson, former police chief of Waxhaw, into custody. He went to prison. He was tried for the murder of the deputies, but not for the two black men. And that has to be righted in some kind of way somewhere at some time. We'll be pushing for that. But it's just a rich, rich history. And of course, not all of the people during that time were bad or ill-willed, but you always have one or two or three that who are like that. And because their economies all depended on one another. Yeah. So Vivie's family did work for the European families here in Waxhaw, and those European families appreciated the symbiotic relationship that they had to one another, and that was quite evident when this place was actually open and dedicated, because many of those families came back to the opening of here, the McDonald House, where we are today, and you could see the great relationships that people had, and you could see the individuals who were just not so friendly as well. It was pretty. Yeah. It was pretty intoxicating that day, but you could see that Waxhaw was different back then than those who have migrated here and made themselves self-wizardress and wizards of other societies that try to be stupid. We know that kind of game a mile away. So we we just have to call those kinds of individuals out, and we've had to deal with some of those since we've been here, and I think that's well documented as well. But we're proud of Luke and his service to his country, and how the town of Waxhaw did those people at that time is just embarrassing.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was saying, you know, like my dad was a contractor, my mother was a maid. That's what she did. She was a maid. And one story with her is that she worked for, I forget the woman in Charlotte, but anyway, these were well-to-do whites, and they were having a dinner party, and another maid needed help with the dinner party, so she asked my mom to help out. So they had on their little maid's uniform, and it just so happened that one of the guests at the party was Walter Cronkite, and he was kind enough to take a picture.
We have the picture.
With my mom and the other maid, and I have that picture at home with my mom and Walter Cronkite. So.
Walter was sharp that day too. I mean, he had on a black tuxedo, and that's the way it was.
That's true. Well, when you were growing up here, was there a lot of, I mean, you mentioned that some families, you know, worked well together. Was there a lot of racial strife? Was there unspoken or spoken rules of things that you knew that you couldn't do because you were black?
Well, as a child, no, see, and that's why I wanted my cousin to be here, because I don't remember anything like that. I don't know if particularly my dad and mom sheltered us, you know, from that.
Which is usually what happened.
Yeah.
But, no, I don't remember. Now, I have had my grandmother, my mother's mother, worked for a lady, what was her name? I can't think of the lady's name. But she and her family were well-to-do. And whenever I see that lady's children, they said that, you know, my aunt and they used to play together. And I thought, I don't remember my aunts telling me that. But I mean, that's what she said. Somehow I just couldn't imagine that was the way that it was. I couldn't imagine that. Because my grandmother did, I guess, some light cleaning and ironing for this lady.
Yeah.
And so she said her kids and my aunts, you know, played together. So I really don't know.
I heard a lot of good things at the opening here, you know, about the ironing, cooking, cleaning, babysitting, and things like that. And again, it was a period where the real people knew that their economies depended on one another. Mm-hmm. I think some of the transplants that moved here had other agendas on their mind. And when you look at some of the ones that I've seen, you can kind of see what their game was, but it looked like Waxhaw got along pretty good, you know, with those individuals who were steeped in the families who were born here, and but the other stuff just crept in, you know. Yeah. That's that would be mine.
Yeah, because I'm thinking that we were sheltered, because I don't remember a lot of racial tension or even thinking about that until I actually left home, and then it just hit me. You know. But as a child, I don't, you know, we were kind of in our own little world, you know. And at that point, I didn't even realize what racism was until I actually left the comfort of the nest. So.
Well, with leaving Waxhaw and then coming back in 2014, what was the biggest changes you saw?
Going to college, going to Michigan State was that was a culture shock, because we had about 60 or less in the graduating class, all black school, to Michigan State, where there were probably 2,000 people, mostly white, and so that in and of itself, and the atmosphere as far as college goes, when we were marching, it was not solemn or somber, or there were guys who, hey, drinking beer, and so it was really, really, really crazy. When I came back from college, I went to work for Wachovia Bank, and so that was okay. And then I moved to Atlanta, and I worked various places in Atlanta, and then finally I went back to school to Medical College of Georgia at that time. And I became an echocardiographer. And so as an echocardiographer, I got a chance to, I worked in that for a while.
I married up.
And then I got a chance to become a locum tenens person. So I traveled all over the United States. I didn't go too much to the West Coast, but I did get a chance to go to work in Hawaii. And what I would do is there were agencies who put the hospital and persons like me together. And so I would go into a hospital or whatever, and I would do echocardiograms and different studies like that for whatever, anywhere from 2 weeks to maybe a year.
Oh, wow.
And so I did enjoy that, but after a while it gets kind of tiring doing all that traveling. But but as far as the racism thing, like I said, I didn't get that until later on. I do remember as a child we went to a park. I don't remember the name, in South Carolina, and I don't know where my parents were at the time, but I was walking down this little dirt road in the park, just walking. They were around, they just weren't with me. I was, exploring. And then evidently a white family came up behind me in the car, and I, was looking at things, and I really didn't hear the car come up, and all of a sudden, and I jumped, and I looked back, and everybody in the car was laughing. And that kind of bothered me, But the thing was, even as a child, I thought I could understand the children laughing, and because children can be cruel anyway. They were laughing, but I couldn't understand why adults could act that way as adults. And I can remember thinking that back at that time, So, but there were things like that would happen, So.
All right. Well, Edwin, the next question is for you.
Okay.
What was your first impression of Waxhaw when you came here as an outsider coming in?
We were both retired, and basically I stayed active. I was one of the earlier network marketers who had some of the most powerful people in the country to sponsor me. North Carolina had a great Amway family, George and Ruth Halsey in Greensboro. And I built a very, very successful business, and still have residual income to this day. So we had planned to just work from home. I was 64 this year, 2023. So that means that I was there when Bill Gates introduced the computer and Michael Jackson and Jackson 5 came on the scene. And I didn't really think that either of them were any smarter than I was, but I didn't realize they had more money than we did. So I looked at the computer field as a wave of the future. I was early with that because I did a lot of advanced reading. And I thought it would be good to, to be in the rural area that we were and being able to work from home. And we were only 4 blocks from uptown Waxhaw, or downtown Waxhaw, so I thought it was pretty cool. Until we discovered, I have land, Vivie has land, and we didn't quite compare our strengths, that way when we met and married and, began our relationship. But what it did do is help us to really understand when we looked at the land situation that we had and putting that together. Again, it brought us, to the town, and at that time, again, not so good, leaders at that time, individuals who people were moving in kind of fast. We realized, of course. Understand, I used to be director of small business for the Chamber of Commerce in Memphis, Tennessee. I was a program coordinator there with a mandate by then Governor Lamar Alexander, who was Tennessee's governor at the time. And he sent a Supreme Court justice to find someone to do that particular job. And I was an expert in savings bonds for First Tennessee Bank at the time. And I decided to leave the bank and went to Jake Butcher's bank, which was World Fair 1980, it was 1982, 84, that was held in Knoxville, Tennessee. And so some people, I left that bank, went to this bank, and discovered that the attorneys of that day had a real problem in liquidating their savings bonds from their files. Well, I was an expert, according to the Federal Reserve, St. Louis branch, which had a Memphis, Tennessee branch. And we discovered that that we had turned all of their bonds into money with their beneficiaries, and the people that the attorneys didn't quite have enough time, they couldn't figure it out. And I was the bond teller for First Tennessee Bank and worked on a lead staff of tellers at that time. So in coming to Waxhaw, I understood where we were, and especially Memphis, Tennessee, and the history. And in doing that, we got to the bottom of quite a few things, developed relationships, always involved in the community, YMCA former chairman, block clubs started, information clearinghouse coordinator. We began to meet some opposition. Vivie was trying to keep the land taxes paid. Prior to our union, she had a little challenge from time to time just in making things meet together, and she saved it every time, of course. But some of the people who served on Waxhaw's town commission had an interest in our land to a fault, and just wanted to wind up with it. So they threw all kinds of obstacles at us, and of course I was able to overcome them all and it was a challenging moment there from time to time, but they didn't scare me, and we won. Truth will always win. But Waxhaw is just a great, great place. It really, really is when you look past some of the stuff. And we're glad we're here. We met some great friends. We were intertwined in the community at a very, very high level. It's not new to me. You know, it's kind of like we moved back in time, but all the people here think that they know all time, but just never seen so much backwardness, but a lot of forward-thinking people. And
let me say this. When he got here, he was so excited about Waxhaw because you could, you can walk anywhere you need to go. You don't even have to get in your truck to drive. And he was just so excited about things. He would walk to the post office, walk to the grocery store, just walk anywhere you needed to. You didn't have to get into your truck. He was so excited about that.
But, you know, still excited. I mean, and I think our work shows now. We're a part of Rotary. We're involved in county government, involved in all the municipalities. We've run for office, ran for mayor of Waxhaw in 2019, ran for county commissioner, Lions Club member, Civitan Club, sheriffs. I chair the Sheriff's Commission, Union County, on crime prevention. A board member of Crime Stoppers, and that just didn't happen. I mean, I was doing work like that way before Waxhaw, but yet we met some people who thought that all of us who look alike, were relegated to things that they chose to, but they just met the wrong guy for their storyline. And I think everybody knows that now. We're an ordained elder at the highest level, serve on one of the most powerful stages in Union County as an elder at Elizabeth Missionary Baptist Church, which is an historic church for about 140 years. And you just don't walk on that stage with an empty head, heart, or credentials. And but we love Union County. We love Waxhaw. I think things are running better because of the challenges that I had here in Waxhaw, because it kind of cleaned house a little bit. I think our videographer here, her job might even exist because of some things that we did. And we're glad that we have the kind of team that we have in Waxhaw now. The town is running a lot better. To sum it up, this administration that came on after the 2019 election is the first administration that has ever run Waxhaw. Waxhaw, when you understand what I understand about things, Waxhaw had been run by a Southern policeman mentality that was designed in railroad towns to keep people who look like us on the other side of the tracks and in their place. And of course, I've seen that. I knew that game as well. And so, but I also knew that they had no power over me. And they simply kind of resented that and tried to push every limit. But I was able to stand. And Waxhaw, I think, benefited from that confrontation. Denzel Washington, who appeared in the Stephen Biko story, has a moment on the stand when he's talking about the judge. The judge asks him a question and he uses the word confrontation. And the judge questioned that word in his vocabulary. Well, what you and I are doing right now, we are confronting one another. And so there are good things that come out of confrontation. And I think the best of it came out in Waxhaw.
Nice. Well, unfortunately, we have reached our hour limit. So we'll stop here. And I'll just officially say then, this is the end of our June 6th, 2023 interview with Vivie and Edwin. And we can always continue this later. If you can get your cousin in, we can absolutely set something else up.
Okay.
And
all right, we'll do that. Is there any particular time or?
No, it's just getting everyone's schedule in the same boat.
Okay. All right. So you know how to contact